So I talked yesterday about Kent Nelson, and I stand by what I said with Kent Nelson. But what's funny is a lot of comments about, hey, somebody scores as many points as Nelson did. There has to be some level of respect. Now, yes, but how about Barry Pederson? What is Pederson remembered for? He's remembered for the trade which made Cam Neely a Boston Bruin. That's the reason I'm wearing my Boston Bruins Cam Neely jersey. And also because Barry Pederson's best years were spent as a Boston Bruin. But while Barry Pederson has become this sort of asterisk to the career of Cam Neely, he was a heck of a lot more than that in his career prior to things sort of falling apart for him. Now, he's drafted 18th overall by the Boston Bruins in 1980, and currently he works as an analyst for NESN. He does a very good job. So, trust me, I'm not going to do some kind of a hatchet job. I don't feel like I did yesterday either. I felt like I was fair with the Ken Nelson video. I'm going to be fair with this one as well. Pederson comes into the league his draft year, 80-81, 9 games played, 1 goal, 4 assists. You know, your standard cup of coffee, get at the NHL level just to get a feel for it. 81-82 is his full-on rookie season. 80 games played, 44 goals, 48 assists, 92 points. He finishes second in Calder voting behind Dale Hawerchuk. And when you look at the stats leaders and all of the young players in that era that were coming up with him, he's the one that's not in the Hall of Fame. 17 games played in the playoffs, 7 goals, 11 assists, 18 points for the Boston Bruins. And he's a center. So he's an excellent young center. 82-83, a year where he went to the All-Star game, 77 games played, 44 goals scored, 61 assists, which is 6th in the league that year. 107 points, which is 5th. And then in the playoffs, it goes crazy. Now, the series that I've got for the great series for 1983 involves the Boston Bruins and the New York Islanders. And the Bruins were overwhelmed by the Islanders. Barry Pederson, though, was one of the few Bruins who really pushed the Islanders in that series. He ends up with 14 games played in the playoffs, 14 goals, 18 assists, 32 points. Not too shabby. 83-84, as he's an all-star again. 80 games played, 39 goals, 77 assists, which is 3rd in the league, 116 points, which is 6th. So back-to-back 100-point seasons. He almost got 40 goals for the 3rd time. And in the playoffs, they get taken out in 3 games. I believe that was by Montreal in the first round. He has 1 assist in that series, and we're done. But through those first 3 years of his career, he is one of the best young players in the game. Again, he's up there. He's mentioned with guys like Michel Goulet, Dale Hawerchuk, and others in that vein of really good young players that the league is building around. So he ends up having a shoulder surgery. There's a tumor on his shoulder. It turns out to be benign, but they have to remove it. He comes back during the season, plays 22 games, 4 goals, 8 assists, 12 points. Again, he just had shoulder surgery. It's going to affect your shot. It's going to affect your game. And then he needed a second shoulder surgery, which also removed part of the muscle in his shoulder. So now you're dealing with a player that is not the player he once was. So he comes back, and he almost plays the full season. He misses 1 game the following season. 79 games played, 29 goals, 47 assists, 76 points. So if you take out the 84-85 season where he only played the 22 games, he plays 1 less game than he did in 83-84. He has 40 less points. Not the same, but still almost a point a game. And he's a center. And there's a team that desperately needs a first-line center. And that's the Vancouver Canucks. The Vancouver Canucks do not have a first-line center that they're happy with in 1986. Thomas Gradin, not a first-line center anymore. They really need a first-line center. They're getting destroyed in the Smythe division by some pretty good teams you may have heard of in the Flames and the Oilers. And they know they need to be able to compete down the middle. So they look at their roster and they see this Cam Neely kid. Cam Neely's stats in Vancouver, his first year, 56 games played, 16 goals, 15 assists, 31 points. In his second year, 72 games played, 21 goals, 18 assists, 39 points. And in 85-86, his last season in Vancouver, he has 14 goals and 20 assists for 34 points. Nobody saw what was going to happen after that. He is traded for Barry Pederson with a number 1 draft pick in 1987. Here's Vancouver's thinking. We've got this Cam Neely kid. He's 3 years into his career. He's about a 30-point player, might hit 40. He's hit 20 goals once. we could probably move on from it. This is why when they talk about, well, Vancouver could move Virtanen, I tell Vancouver fans, you're crazy. So, because, yeah, we didn't see it with Neely either, and then all of a sudden it was there. He goes to Boston that first year, 75 games played, 36 goals, 36 assists, 72 points. Oh, and that number one draft pick becomes Glenn Wesley because the Canucks are completely and totally inept. So, it is an absolutely horrible, lopsided trade, but it all falls on Barry Pederson. Barry Pederson, who was a plus 17 in his last year in Boston, is a minus 17 in Vancouver. Has 79 games played, 24 goals, 52 assists, 76 points. Again, he's almost a point a game. He's almost a point a game in Vancouver. He's not a bad player. Really isn't. He's not the player he was before the shoulder injury. Not injury, the shoulder surgery for the tumor. And so after those two surgeries he needed, he's not the same player, but he's still pretty good. He's around a point a game. 87-88, 76 games played, 19 goals, 52 assists, 71 points. The problem is Vancouver is still miserably bad. He is not providing that level of offense they had hoped for from a first-line center. Odds are they were hoping for a bounce back, not necessarily 100 points, but 90 would have been nice. This is still the 80s. And meanwhile, in 88, the Boston Bruins are going to the Stanley Cup Finals, and Cam Neely is a prominent member of the Boston Bruins that go to that Stanley Cup Finals. 88-89, he only plays 62 games due to injury, 15 goals, 26 assists, 41 points. This is where I will say, yes, the Barry Pederson experiment has fallen apart, and he's done. The Canucks not able to get into the playoffs with him, and again, the amount of pressure on him right out of the gate, probably not fair. At the time Vancouver picks him up, he's probably not a first-line center, probably would have been better off being second, but that pressure is there. And again, the stronger Cam Neely's play gets in Boston, the worse Barry Pederson's play in Vancouver is going to look as a result. So 89-90, he plays 16 games with Vancouver, 2 goals, 7 assists, 9 points, and he's traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's traded with Rod Buskus, who had just come to Vancouver from Pittsburgh, as I remembered. Or I know Buskus moved around a lot there. Tony Tanti also went with him, one of my Vancouver favorites. I've got him on the wall, I believe. I believe I've got him on the wall. Anyways. And he was traded for Dave Capuano, Andrew McBain, and Dan Quinn. Now, of course, Capuano became a decent enough forward for Vancouver. McBain, it didn't work out so much, but that was fine. And Dan Quinn, they would eventually flip him about a year later to St. Louis along with Garth Butcher in order to get everybody out of St. Louis. St. Louis just sent a bunch of players to Vancouver and took Quinn and Butcher. It didn't seem fair, but then they did it again in 94 when they gave us Jeff Brown, but it's fine. Now, in Pittsburgh, 38 games played, 4 goals, 18 assists, 22 points. Barry Pederson clearly in decline at this stage in his career. And there's no argument against that. 90-91, 46 games played, 6 goals, 8 assists, 14 points. So again, the offense is basically gone. Now, he doesn't play in the playoffs, but Pittsburgh wins the Stanley Cup. So technically, he's on a Stanley Cup winning roster in 1991. Then in the summer of 91, he signs with Hartford. So you see HFD right underneath the Carolina logo there. 5 games played in Hartford, 2 goals, 2 assists in the 91-92 season. And then November 14th of 1991, he's traded back to Boston to finish out his career for future considerations, which are not met, I'm guessing, because it still says future considerations. In Boston, he played 33 games to finish out his career, 3 goals, 6 assists, 9 points. So, his overall regular season numbers, in 701 games played, 238 goals, 416 assists, 654 points. Pretty close to a point a game over his career. In the playoffs, 34 games played, 22 goals, 30 assists, 52 points. His points per game in the playoffs is fantastic. 7 career hat tricks. The last hat trick he had in his career was March 27th of 1984. And it is shortly before this. So, for Barry Pederson, it was a tough go. It was a tough go for him. His one overtime goal in the playoffs came in Game 1 against the Quebec Nordiques in 1983, April 5th. And that was in Boston. So, it was a great young career that definitely took a turn based on the shoulder surgeries that he took. And then it was made to look worse by the Neely trade than what it really was. In my opinion, Pederson, great young player who through injury ended up having his numbers negatively impacted. He was trending towards Hall of Fame level career, and then it just didn't work because again, that trade, it's not on him. He played well enough, but when you're traded for a future Hall of Famer in Cam Neely, it's gonna make that whole storyline a lot tougher to take. And again in Vancouver, it was epic failure after epic failure during the 80s. And right up until Linden arrived, and then things started to improve as Pat Quinn started to put his stamp on the team. But it was really, really adrift for most of the 80s. And sadly, Pederson ended up being kind of, whether you want to call it a punchline or an asterisk or an afterthought, that's where it ended up. He was a good player. And he's a pretty good analyst for Nesson. I know Jack Edwards takes a lot of flack, and yep, I get it. I'm not going to make any excuses for his blatant homerism. But Pederson's a good analyst and seems like a really good guy. And it's a shame that his career wasn't longer, wasn't more productive after the shoulder surgeries, but that's the way these things work. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.